Welcome back to the final of the 4 series of Masterclass in HR for the benefit of everyone present here and those who have joined us for the first time. The first session was on talent acquisition. That was followed by a session on designing the learning framework in the second week of July. And last week we had a session on building high performance organization. And today we are concluding the masterclass in HR session with the session on engaging and retaining talent. Like the previous sessions, the format of today's session is going to be that the presentation will be for 30 to 40 minutes, and this will be followed by Q&A. And you can put your questions and queries during the presentation in the chat below, or during the Q&A, you can put your questions in the chat or raise your hand. We'll unmute you and you can ask the question directly. And yeah, without any delay, I will introduce the speaker for today, Ms. Lata Nabisan, who is currently the managing partner of Savitor Business Consulting LLP. Savitor Business Consulting LLP focuses on individual and organizational change and transformation. Some of their assignments include executive coaching, competency mapping, and competency-based learning programs, full cycle leadership development programs, organization redesign, sales organization effectiveness, the design of incentive plans, organization culture, performance management systems built on concept of OKR, employer branding, employee engagement, and HR team mentoring. The client companies are in the IT services, product development, ITES, media, and financial services sector. Prior to Savitor, she was the President People and Culture of Servion Global Solutions. On behalf of TiE Chennai and everyone present here, I would like to welcome you, ma'am, and request you to take over the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Priya. Thank you very much. Welcome to everyone. It's been a tremendous month, really, when Priya actually asked me to do this in June, Akila and Priya. I actually was very, very nervous about accepting this because I kind of was thinking about how am I going to find the time and all of that to make this happen. But really happy I did this. I've enjoyed every single one of the interactions. So looking forward to today's session. As Priya said, we started with how do I acquire talent? What are some of the best ways that we can get people into our organization, attract people? How do we create a different value proposition? So that was about recruitment. We looked at some of the methods and all of that. From there, we looked at creating a learning organization, how important it is. The next was on building a high performance culture, but you do all these good things. You hire the best of people, you create a fantastic learning framework, and you build a high performance culture. But if you're not able to engage and retain your people, then all of this falls flat. So that's really the importance of today's session, engaging and retaining talent. It's also very closely tied with each of the other elements, because if you don't engage and retain talent, you will never be able to bring the focus to acquiring talent that it requires. It's very closely tied with building a learning framework, because learning is part of engagement. And of course, a high performing talent base also looks forward to a high performing organization. So in a way, all these sessions are very closely interlinked. So you will see that the theme that I used in the other sessions will continue here. So what will we cover during this next 1 hour? First is, of course, we will look at some definitions. What is the definition of an engaging workplace? What are some of the principles in designing your engagement framework? what are some of the key elements of a good engagement strategy. And central to employee engagement is culture and values. It's very amorphous, it is not tangible, but at the same time, they say culture eats strategy for breakfast. So just as important as your strategy is, culture is equally important. So, and culture is actually the backbone of your engagement strategy. So we'll just spend a bit of time on that, especially in terms of giving you some framework in terms of how can you define your organization's culture and build your culture. We will look at some of the unique challenges that startups and scale-ups have as far as employee engagement is concerned. And then, of course, we'll talk about attrition, about staying ahead of attrition. Perhaps not so much of a concern in today's times when people are working from home and there aren't as many jobs in circulation as before, but definitely it's going to get back there, and it's a good idea to look at that. And finally, we will look at engagement of remote teams. Today's challenge, really, the current reality that people are all working from home, people are working remote, they're balancing multiple things. So how do we keep them engaged? How do we ensure that we hold them together? And finally, we will look at some of the mantras for success. So that's really what we will cover. Starting with the definition of an engaged workplace. Now, if you ask employees, you will get several definitions. I've heard, I guess if we're having fun at work and there's lots of celebrations, we will be more engaged in the workplace, is one point of view. Yeah, someone of course said great cafeteria is extremely important, and along with that in smaller print, great restrooms too. So restrooms, cafeteria, one of those figure in the list. Flexible work, transport, how do I get to work and beyond? Gifts, do I get surprises from the leadership team? Are there gifts and all of that? Finally, also about the money, am I paid fairly? Am I paid on par with market? So these are some of the elements that top of the mind come. Are these important? Of course, these are important. I don't want to say that these are not important. If, for example, employees are craving flexible work and you're not able to provide that, there is likely to be some disengagement. But the deeper question is, you have all of this. You have some fantastic celebrations, you have great cafeteria, you have great restrooms, you have flexible work arrangements, transport, gifts, money, all of that is there. Does that spell out a highly engaged workforce? And that's where the question comes. Actually, no. Before I get there though, there are lots of models. I think the study on how do we engage employees actually started in the 1960s. Taylor was the first one, but many of those studies of those days, for example, the Herzberg theory of motivation. For those of you who are students of HR, you'll be familiar with that, about how he said that an employee who is being observed closely, who feels that management is paying attention to him or her, is more highly engaged than someone who's feeling cut off and alienated. So some of those theories and principles do play. One of the most popular engagement models is the Great Place to Work model. Some of you may be familiar with this. So according to the Great Place to Work model, it's trust, fairness, credibility, respect, pride, and camaraderie. These are the elements of employee engagement, and that's very fair, really. Of course, they've tucked in many of the things that we saw on the previous slide under each of this. So, for example, compensation has come in fairness and also in credibility. Many of those elements would have come in one or the other question, but this is a good framework to have. What I've also done is, given my experience of working with startups, SMEs, and MSMEs, I actually put down, when I look at the organizations where I see great engagement, what are some of those defining elements? And to me, the first one is a sense of purpose and excitement. Now, in the most highly engaged teams, the team members have a strong sense of purpose. They are excited about the work that they do, and they are highly engaged. And that's really about commitment to the cause. They feel that there is a larger cause that they are working for, and that brings tremendous engagement. To me, a symptom of high engagement is how willing is this employee to go the extra mile. How far are they willing to stretch? Do they do whatever it takes to get things done for the organization? Do they go far beyond the boundaries of what they're expected to do? I have a favorite story from one of my previous companies. This is about a service engineer who worked in with a customer organization of the company, which was a bank in the Middle East. So, you know, the Middle East has storms very often, and people at those times, everything shuts down. The roads shut down, electricity shuts down, and all of that. And this man, his name was Shahil. I'll never forget this. And these are the stories that make engagement. 10 years later, you still remember that person's name. So Shahul Hamid was the person. And what Shahul did was he got a call from the bank saying, our servers are down. Shahul, what do we do? He said, hold on, let me see. And this was at 12 o'clock, close to 12 o'clock at night. No power. He has a wife and baby at home. Roads are flooded. And he walks all the way to the bank. He reaches at 5 o'clock in the morning. He sets right whatever needed to be set right. And he walks all the way back home. And he doesn't think even that he needs to tell the leadership back in Chennai what he's done, all the, take all the glory. He just didn't do that. The team actually, the leadership team in Chennai came to know when the customer actually said, no, we are never going to go away from you simply because of what this one man did for us. And that's when everybody knew. To me, that is a sign of engagement. Is your employee willing to go the extra mile? And so often I hear this, that our employees don't take ownership. How do you create a climate where people can take ownership? We will look at that also. So the other one is, do you give employees an opportunity to make an impact? That is important. Role efficacy. How important do I see my role as? Do I see my role as the bricklayer or the cathedral builder? Do I see my role as something that leads to the overall organization? Do I see the connect? And that's important. Do I trust this leadership team? Do I know that they have my back? Do I know that if I go to them when I'm in trouble, they will take care of me? That is a tremendous source of engagement. I used to work in a manufacturing organization, and one of the most highly engaged teams had a plant manager who was such a rude person. And, you know, as a young management trainee in that organization, I remember constantly wondering, what makes people work for this man? And then I realized what he does so differently. Now, he may be rude, he may be rough, he may be all of that. But if you are in trouble, he is the one man who you can trust to take care of you. He is there. If you have a death in your family, he is there to help you. He is there standing shoulder to shoulder with you, even to the extent of carrying the coffin. To that extent, that is the kind of work that he does. But at work, he's such a taskmaster, so rude, and people love to work for him. So that is about trust. Okay? And people, of course, want to work to team effort. They love to work in teams. So how do you create that environment? And finally, I think employee engagement is about authenticity and genuineness. So how do I come across as an employer, as a HR team, as a leader in the organization, as someone who's extremely authentic and genuine? I'm not here to cheat an employee. I would rather tell him the truth and have him disappointed in me than to tell a lie. So if the employee feels that no matter what, you're going to tell them the truth, and this is a tough one. You know, not for nothing did Gandhiji talk about his experiments with truth and the struggles that he faced. it's really a very, very tough line to walk. But I'm telling you, if as an organization you're able to walk that line, your people will always be engaged. So to me, based on all the experience that I have, to me, this is really what a highly engaged workplace has. And as a leader, if I can really drive some of these these characteristics of a highly engaged workplace, I think that's what's going to help you to succeed. As always, I'd like to start with some design principles. How do you create an engaged workplace? First is being strategic is very important. You know, there are many organizations that go with flavor of the season. So everybody is doing a hackathon. Let's also do a hackathon. Everybody is doing this. Let's also do this. Don't do that. Don't fly by the seat of your pants. Please always ensure that you're very strategic. You look at what am I trying to build, and I'll walk you through some of the ways that you can do that. So being strategic is important. Making it customized and meaningful. Now, our organizations, each of them are unique. One of the organizations I worked with was an R&D organization. Now, if I were to do happy hours and all of that there, people will laugh at me and say, hey, what are you talking about? Okay. But over there, what made tremendous sense is to have some very good learning programs, some great sessions that you have, expert speakers, you nominate them for programs, they love all that. So you've got to see who is my audience and customize your engagement program and everything that you do towards that. You've got to make it sustainable, and I'll give you examples of what this really means to be sustainable and, of course, authentic. It must sit well with you. There are many organizations which try to imitate what's happening in the US, what others are doing. Some of that our people are not familiar with. So you've got to look at what makes sense for our people. If you're dealing with millennials, you've got to do things which will appeal to millennials. If your organization is a team of knowledge workers, highly intense knowledge workers, you've got to do something which will make sense to them. So it's really about customizing, and every talk that I give, I keep talking about this. Please don't do things which are generic, which don't address a need. It's a waste of money. So given all of this, given this context, what are some key elements of your engagement strategy? The first one, and to me, culture and values, there is nothing which is more important than culture and values. It defines who you are, it defines who your employees are, and gives a very clear message to customers and the market in terms of what kind of a company you are. Culture and values is very important. Your policies and practices. You know, some of the best workplaces, in the US especially, they say that we operate without rules. We don't have rules because we say use common sense. That's the only policy book we have. It's a great thing to take. It's a great stand to take, provided that you educate your employees enough in terms of the culture and values. If you've done that, you could even say that we don't have policies. We throw the policy book out of the window because we trust our employees to use common sense. That's an extreme. But even otherwise, there are ways that you can do this. I was talking to someone yesterday who came from the Krishnamurti Foundation School, and they were telling me about how they shape culture in the children, what all they do to ensure that all the practices and the policies of the school reflect the ethos that the company is trying to drive. Okay. Communication and connect, of course, is very important because people stay with you because they see you as a leader. So communication and connect is important. Challenging work, of course, is important. Supporting people to succeed. And of course, continuous learning and growth, giving people an opportunity to feel that they're growing. If they're not learning anything, they will begin to feel restless. So you've got to ensure that continuously people are seeing betterment in their lives and in their skills. Some of these are important. I thought I would walk you through a very simple framework on how do you build your unique culture. Now, culture happens sometimes by accident, and sometimes when culture happens by accident, it's really not the most desirable culture. So, 5 employees come in from somewhere, and they come in with their own unique perspectives of how it happens. And before you know it, that spreads. There are 10 others who are following what they do. So, building your unique culture is extremely important. How do you do that? First, you look at what is my company all about? What is the purpose of my company? What is the work that I do? What do my customers value? What do my employees value? What do our stakeholders value? What does our market require? I'll give you an example. So, for example, you take 2 companies. You take Google and you take L&T. Google is known for creativity, innovation, doing things which are very different. So therefore, what is the kind of workplace they have? They have a high fun workplace. Okay? So that's Google on one side. Just imagine L&T. L&T builds bridges, is into construction. What is very important over there? What is very important for L&T? Dependability, resilience. They are the people who can be absolutely reliable. Now, just imagine if you had Google culture in L&T, it would be a disaster. So, therefore, in L&T, what is the culture all about? Discipline, regulation, clarity, all of that is what L&T drives. Now, similarly, you've got to ask yourself, what is the culture that my company should build? What is the culture that will really help me to win in the market, that my customers will love about us? So that is where it starts. What will also help is for you to explore what has brought me here in the last 5 years of my existence. What are some of the things, what are some of the behaviors that really helped me to win? So for example, it could be an ability to take risks. It could be a deep connect with the customer, deep customer empathy. But what really brought us here? Identify those behaviors. You look at your current reality. For many companies, these times, the COVID times, have been a huge test of their current reality. How have employees risen? And I've heard some lovely stories from some of my client organizations that when Modi ji announced the lockdown on one night at 8 p.m., they actually had that night to shift all the machines, get BCP set up, and it was chaotic. But the promoter who was talking to me about this had tears in his eyes when he said that, I was so impressed the way the whole night, the whole team ran. That's current reality. So really about that sense of ownership, that sense of wanting to do things. So that's current reality. What are some of the future trends? What's happening in the market? What are some of the things that are going to come up? So what will it mean if our whole industry goes digital? How is it going to be? Right. Now, based on all of this, you define therefore what are our differentiators. Now, you will see that when I talk about this differentiators, you would have seen that those of you who attended the previous sessions will see that in every session I've been talking about the differentiators. So our differentiators is important, and from there you distill your culture in terms of values and behaviors. So once you've got your culture set, then it's really about implementing the culture. So first is of course sensitization. Great idea for the leader to himself or herself stand up and talk about the culture. Also a great idea to design a good, fun workshop that will help employees see the culture. And then how do you institutionalize this? How do you embed this in every system and process, every policy that you have? And finally, how do you measure how you're doing on culture? Now, if you do all of this, I can assure you your culture becomes much more predictable, and it has an impact on every single HR process, especially in retention. I don't know how many of you have seen this. We have. So just quickly, I'm going to just play a short video for you. going to play this. You can look at it later. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So this was the Haka dance. So the New Zealand team, the All Blacks team, plays this before every match. So it's a great way to have a symbol or a practice that gets everybody together. Now, what typically happens is that whenever there is a very challenging situation, the whole team in any case comes together. If there is, but when that situation passes, the whole engagement level again drops. Everybody just sighs and goes back to old ways. So how do you ensure that in normal circumstances, it is possible to keep people excited and engaged? Those are some of the questions to look at. Now, I wanted to speak also about the unique challenges that startups and scale-ups have as far as culture is concerned and as far as employee engagement is concerned. So these are all statements that I picked up from the corridors in the organizations I consult with. So first one is, when I started, I made it a practice to write to each employee on their birthdays and New Year. I'm struggling to continue the tradition. Can I delegate this? Is a question that the CEO asked. And so she also said that she actually tried this and it had disastrous efforts because it had the reverse effect. So how do I now stop doing this? Because it's just too much. The company has grown. Earlier, when we were 10 employees, it was easy. Today, it is 150 people, and I can't be sitting and writing 150 personalized notes. So so that was one. Another organization, when I first started the company, everyone called me sir. Now I do business with American companies, and it is very embarrassing when my team calls me sir, but I am unable to get them to change this habit. See, this is what happens. When you start out with looking at how do I want to shape this organization and build it from day one. It's extremely difficult. Is it possible to change? Of course it is possible to change, but change is always difficult. So it's better to scope it properly from day one. In this company, no one follows policies. People rarely complete their appraisals, and travel claims are often submitted after a year or two. When you're a small team, it's all right if people delay things, but as you get larger, it becomes difficult. My problem is that I have several old-timers in senior roles as VP who have not grown their capabilities for their roles. I cannot hire above them, but they're slowing my company. So what do I do? So all problems of scale up really. And really the solutions that you have today sometimes become tomorrow's problems. So, my first point in your employee engagement strategy was about being strategic. And that's where this is important. So when you structure whatever you do, and every small action is part of your culture really, it reflects who you are. So for example, do I celebrate Diwali? What kind of sweets do I give employees? Do I give the same sweets from the managing director to the lowest employee in my organization? All of these are reflective of culture. In your car park, for example, do I have different car parking for different people? That's reflective of culture. Now, if you're a very hierarchical organization, fine to do that, perfectly good. If you're not a hierarchical organization and you're trying to build a highly empowered organization, don't do that. So this is what I mean about the messaging, the hidden messaging in every action that you do. People are taking away ideas from that. So these are some of the elements of employee engagement that I wanted to talk about. I also want to spend a couple of minutes on attrition before I open the floor for questions. Now, this is something that I get asked very often. A recent company, and I think I referred to this company, their attrition is at 65%. Now, whatever they do, it just has no impact because it's like a leaking bucket. And the kind of effort they have to do at training and all of it. So attrition is something that you have to definitely pay attention to. Someone had raised a question from your group in terms of what is desirable attrition. So is attrition desirable? Yes, some attrition is desirable, because what happens otherwise is that as employees continue in your organization, and in every organization there is a pyramid, so people will start stagnating in the same levels, your costs will go up and so on. So yes, some churn, some attrition is desirable, but you've got to decide based on your industry, based on your organization, what makes sense for you. Also, it's important to go beyond the formulas and ratios. Now, in today's world, almost every organization reports attrition numbers to the board. There are different formulas. Go beyond the formulas. Look at what makes sense in your organization. Look at who are the people who are leaving. Are my high performers leaving? I'm deeply concerned. Are my most talented employees leaving? Deeply concerned. Are the people who are really the flag bearers or torch bearers for my culture leaving? Very deeply concerned. This is what you should be looking at. Okay, so that's point number one. Point number two is that you've got to go beyond the 4 better prospects. Now, I'm pretty sure in every attrition report, the highest number of people who leave for a reason is for better prospects. It doesn't mean anything. You've got to go beyond. You've got to go into why are people leaving. So competition is poaching. Fair enough. That's a point. Why is competition able to poach from you? Ideally, they should not be able to poach from you. So look at the basic reasons. Are you holding your employees close enough? Do they feel challenged at work? Do they feel deeply appreciated? Ask all these questions before you decide what is the root cause of your attrition. And it's important to track attrition meaningfully. So look at key functions, look at key levels in the organization, look at key talent in the organization, and track attrition based on all of this. All of this is important. I also want to talk about preempting attrition, having an early warning system in place. An early warning system is nothing but every month, maybe a month or a quarter, depending on whatever makes sense for you, assessing who are the employees who are at risk. So every leader puts up a report. In my team, here's what I think. These are the people at risk. These are the people I'm concerned about. This is what I think we should do. In today's world, whether your organization is small or large, customization is what is key. If you're small, it is easy. You can talk to employees and get them. But if you're large, here's where data comes in. Today, every large organization, you'll actually see it, when you, all your service providers, whether it is your Vodafone, whether it is your Amazon, they all customize their offerings to you. Similarly, it's important for you to customize your offerings to your employees. The last point on this is that your ex-employees are actually your brand ambassadors. I've seen many promoters who feel such a sense of angst when someone leaves their organization that they get very irritated, they show a very morose face and all of that. Remember, as your organization grows, people will leave. It's a good sign of growth when some people leave. It's okay. They may come back, they may not come back, but what you really want them to be is your brand ambassador. So ensure that when someone leaves your organization, they go on a positive note. Send them with your best wishes. All of that is good. Okay, so staying ahead of attrition. Finally, today's times, employee engagement was easy when we were all face to face, much more difficult when it is remote. I have just 2 points here, just 2 points, but both equally important. The first one is communication. You need to communicate so much more. Some of the CEOs I work with have been sending notes to their people. They've been doing open houses. They've been really stepping up on the communication. So stepping up on the communication is important, especially at this stage. In the initial stages, everybody was saying, yeah, this is a short-term thing. Let's just put our shoulders to the wheel. Let's just do what it takes today. Today, at this stage, I think 120 days into the lockdown, there is a sense of giving up, frustration, anger, irritation, all of that is coming. So at no other time during these last 4 months was communication as important as today. So please do step up your communication. Also very important to stay connected with your people. Some best practices where you have millennials, good idea to do happy hours, get everybody to grab a drink and sit together, have a casual conversation. In other organizations, one of the things that was very successfully launched last week in a client organization I work with was a virtual family day. It was such fun, really. They posted it on YouTube and on Zoom, had entire families participating. They had a talent show by family members. And one of the biggest hits was a recognition of the unsung heroes. What they did was they asked employees to nominate people who are really supporting them in working for the company. And they recognized those people. The managing director thanked them for helping their employees work from home and make it a success. So all of that happened. So there are various creative ways that you can engage employees during this time. Important to be very conscious of it. Okay. Finally, some mantras for successors always. Don't follow fads. Don't do something because you read about it, something looked good, something that I said seemed to appeal. See whether it makes sense for your organization. Customize what you do. Make it very meaningful for your employees. Make it very deliberate, very focused, very meaningful. Make it extremely sustainable. And finally, be authentic. Be genuine. Be who you are. So thank you very much. I'm open for questions now.
Thank you, ma'am. We have received the first question from Anand Ahuja.
Okay.
I hope I'm clear because I heard that my introduction was not very clear because of the internet issues. Anyway, I have read in an article that 80% of the reasons for employees leaving the organization are due to the dissatisfaction of working with their boss. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I don't know if you read this book, Anand, about people don't leave organizations, people leave managers. Absolutely, I agree with that. So, yeah, and culture also, all of it is driven by your managers and your leaders. So extremely important to have a pulse on what is happening over there and ensuring that your managers are giving the right messages. I've always said this. You may be extremely talented, but if you are not towing the line on the company culture, if you are not treating your employees well, we have no place for you in this organization. If you have the boldness to take that stand, your employees will really feel happy. Yes, Anand, absolutely agree with you.
He has a similar follow-up question. It is also stated that the bottleneck in a bottle is at the top. Similarly, the bottlenecks in an organization are at the top. It appears that on most occasions, the senior management is a problem in the culture percolating down to the employees. I think you've already answered that. But
yeah. No, and I think this is where the CEO and HR have to step up. The CEO has to define what is the organization and culture that he or she wants to build in consultation with the leadership team, and they all have to agree, which is why, if you go back to that slide about culture building, I said, what do employees want also? So, and building it in a very participative manner, asking everybody to share in it.
Jawahar wants to ask you questions directly,
Sure.
so I've unmuted him.
Ma'am, good evening, ma'am. How are you?
Good evening, Jawahar. Good evening, Jawahar. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Good to have you back. Yes.
Thank you. As usual, I have quite a few questions. I hope
Sure.
I don't, infringe on others' time. But I'll ask a few questions and then later, if I have time, I'll come back now. So first question is like, people, some of the companies, when people try to leave, they offer matching offers, in terms of money. So personally, I feel some of the employees take this as a way to blackmail the company and, try to get more money from the management. So I don't know, like, at what point should I decide whether I should offer a matching offer or I should say goodbye to the employee. What are the criteria I need to take into account before making that decision?
Yeah. So, Jawahar, this is really a market-driven approach. You can't really do anything about it. Uh, so, what happens typically in this situation is there are four companies who are all competing also for the same talent base. Now, it is possible that you can build a shadow resource and things like that. You should look at that. For every critical employee, you must have a succession plan such that you have somebody who's a backup, which will actually de-risk you to some extent. But finally, you've got to take a practical call looking at the risks to your business. If I lose this person today, what is the risk to my business? What is the risk that I'm putting all the other employees at? There are also considerations that if you raise this person's salary, what is it going to mean in terms of everyone else in the organization? So you either see, is this person a great performer, head and shoulders above everybody else? Okay, fine, I can raise the salary. But if the person is not really over there, you may either have to raise everybody else's salary, which may not be affordable, or you may have to say, I'm sorry, I will have to let him go. So I would actually say that it has to be seen to be fair also from that point of view, that and it cannot be an expectation by everyone that if I come with an offer, this company will match it. You must do it on a person to person basis so that people do not have the assurance that if I go, they will match this. Very often people just call that bluff, that I just need to collect an offer just before salary compensation revision and go and talk. And maybe I will get a better raise. So these are subtle messages that you have to give people, that it's not about this, and all the time talk about total package, not just about compensation. Yeah, I hope I answered the question, Jawahar.
And my other question is, ma'am, when you take disciplinary actions on employees, it's kind of really, a very touchy subject, and it's very difficult for any employer to reveal names of the employees who actually has this disciplinary action. But at the same time, the employer also has one more thing in their mind, in the sense that the same mistake shouldn't be repeated by other employees. So, if you put it on the notice board, such and such person did unethical things in the company and they got fired, it's kind of very insulting for the persons who got fired. But at the same time, if I don't put it, then the other people in the organization would not know what was the unethical thing that was done by those people who got fired. So, how do I balance this? How do you put it on the notice board at the same time, not reveal the names? It's kind of very difficult.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So one is, you want to ensure that employees know that this person has quit, because you don't want them to go and talk to the person or reveal anything which can be dangerous. So therefore, you want to tell people who has gone. So I would actually put out a general message saying that just to inform everybody that so and so has moved on from the organization. This person has taken charge, so please reach out to only this person. I would also call a meeting of all the people in that team, as well as all the leaders and the managers, and talk to them without naming the person. Of course, everybody will know who the person is. Doesn't matter. The person has done something, but I would definitely want to tell people what has happened. The unfortunate incident that has happened, I will talk to them about it. I would not go and put it on a notice board, but I will definitely put it in writing that so and so has left the organization, and I will call people into a room and talk to them that this is the incident that has happened, and what is the impact it has on the organization.
Wow, great, ma'am. Thanks a lot. Very insightful. Thank you so much. And one last question, man, quickly. Right now we have so much of youngsters in the company, right? In all companies, they are called
Yes.
millennials. Their attitudes towards work is like, very. I would say it's very different from, the people who are like much elder to them, and they find it very difficult to mingle with the people who are elder to them, and also the way they talk to their bosses is kind of very much westernized, not listening to the commands of the boss, questioning the boss too much, and they don't understand the meaning of hierarchy in a company, things like that. So my question is, how do you deal with these millennials and make them part of your company?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would actually say that it actually starts from the institute to institution transition. So, how powerful an orientation program do you have is the first thing. Even if they have 2 years of experience, I would actually say that it helps to orient them into the company in terms of what is the culture, how do we address each other, what happens, how does this thing. That's point one. I want to also talk very quickly of one quick example of a millennial whom I had an opportunity to work with. Now, this was a person whom everybody said is not, uh, is just not interested in the work, takes no ownership, does not step up. Now, two, three things that helped. One was to give this person meaningful work and hold the person accountable. Be very tough. You can be tough if the person feels that you're value adding. Give the person challenging work, push them hard, put them in the limelight when they do well. They love all, then that's one way that they get engaged. So I think giving millennials meaningful work is very important. That's a first step. Uh, Giving them the right orientation when they get into the organization is a good one. I've also seen that it helps when you actually tag them along with someone else in the organization who actually works with them in the first 1 month or second month. Uh, in American parlance, it's called buddy. I don't normally use that word, but really in terms of a mentor or a peer who can really handhold the person and guide the person, somebody they can talk to. So all of those help.
Okay. Thanks a lot, man. Thank you very
Jawahar,
much.
thank you for the questions. It was wonderful having you in the session.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. Our next question is also from Anand Aja. Based on your previous reply, it appears that the senior management has to be retrained in reducing the attrition and promoting the organization culture. So he
I'm
wants to
sorry, I
know.
didn't.
No,
What
he
is the
wants to
question?
know if it's true that based on your reply, it appears that the senior management has to be retrained in reducing the attrition and promoting the organization culture.
Sure, yes. Uh, one thing I'm very clear about, if your leadership team is not engaged, there is no point talking of employee engagement. It is so important to have your leadership team understand. I've run workshops where we've had, almost late evening, late night it goes into, because there is so much of angst, conflict. So bringing that conflict out in the open, people don't oppose something for the sake of it. There is a belief or an assumption in their heads that if this happens, this is what is likely to happen. So for example, very often one assumption is that if we give them freedom, they will actually take over and they will not do what we tell them to do. Now, addressing these assumptions is important. So getting your leadership team to work together, orienting them is very important. Yes, I totally agree.
Yeah. So the next question is from Shivram. If anyone is not leaving, what does it mean? It might be because of several reasons, like they are comfortable or well paid than others in that zone. The organization is more ethical. In such case, how should the organization be aware that they're having the right people in the right place?
Yeah. Hi, Shivram. Uh, yeah, so having the right, so having someone who is sitting content and not looking out is a good thing for the organization, provided that the person is contributing meaningfully and doing a good job. It's only when the person stops doing that that you have to be concerned. So question to ask yourself is the person continuing to perform at a high level? Is the person also continuing to grow their competencies and capabilities? Because the danger with someone who stays on for a long time is that their skills and competencies may become defunct. So you've just got to ensure that the person is continually upgrading himself or herself. So that's really what you need to do.
Yeah. Shall I proceed?
Yes, please. Sorry about that. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Next question is from Nikita. You want to know, ma'am, I was wondering, how do we retain our employees back? Even after they're given everything, why do they leave?
Yeah. Nikita, that's a good question, and it is realistic as well, but especially in organizations that are that are operating in a market where there is high demand for talent, multiple operations, or someone who's, I've seen organizations where you're hiring somebody who's already on notice period, and then the person, you're waiting for the person to join. In the meanwhile, the person has taken up some 5 offers. So today, unfortunately, the labor market is such, and we can't really work against it. Now, one is to really look at if this person is really valuable to you, seeing what motivates the person, what does this person aspire for, and helping them to achieve that. That is one way that you can retain. Otherwise, like I said earlier, ensuring that you have good successors in place. Succession planning is one great way to ensure that you're de-risking attrition. But you're right, sometimes you may give them everything, you maybe have the best of places, but still people resign. But I'm sure those are not in large numbers. Those will be, there will still be some attrition. Yeah. The game is not to retain every single person in the organization. You must be willing to let a few people go, and that is where being QC, being very uh, working your options well is very important.
Yeah. The next question is from Venkateshwaran. We are into manufacturing. We hire diploma candidates. We give them on-the-job training. We find that they are not sticking to the job. They're paid the market rate. What is that we are missing? Can you suggest some ways to find out what is wrong?
Yeah. Venkateshan, what I would really do is to interview people who have left and who are in the company, to really understand from the people who left, what did they miss over here? Why did they leave? And people who are in the company, what do they look forward to? What do they want to be 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line? There is always a root cause why people leave. So, and understanding that is the advice that I would give you before you look at solutions and what do I need to do. Really understanding what is the problem here, why are people leaving, and that you can do only if you get into the shoes of the person there. So I would suggest that you speak to them or have someone who's close to them speak to them to really understand and explain to you and help you to look at what is the issue here.
Yeah. So the next question is also from Shivaram. What do you mean critical employee? Is a clear process? I didn't get that. What do you mean?
Okay. Yeah, I get
Is there
that.
a clear process for?
To define who are critical employees.
Yeah, it's the question still continues. It is not easy to satisfy all the need of people, including me as management. People tend to move when they feel uncomfortable due to their personal reasons. When I'm people dependent, then the word critical comes, but when process oriented, it will be a small backlogged for a very short period. Is it so? He wants to know that.
Sorry, Priya, maybe can I
think,
get Shivaram to
yeah,
explain?
I think it will be better. Yeah.
Hi, yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, what I'm trying to ask is that, what do you mean exactly a critical employee is? This is the first question. And then, because if it is a process oriented, because I cannot stop anyone who wants to leave. If his mind is set that he want to leave, I cannot stop.
Sure.
And second thing is that we live, I mean, particularly in our organization have a culture that if anyone will come and tell me that I would like to leave, the next second we shake hands with them, we say, thank you, you are no more with the organization. We don't even ask why, because we think that he has already considered in his mind that he want to leave. So in such case, why should I want to sit and patch with him if it is a process oriented? If it is a people dependent, okay, I need to train somebody to bring into the place. I need some time to refit in it. But whereas if it is a process oriented, the process will be continued by the next person who is going to join the place.
Yeah,
Maybe I may need a very short time as a backlog so that he needs to understand the process. In such case, what does a critical employee mean?
Yeah. So Shivaram, the term critical employee again has to be taken in context. Now, in your organization, the way I understand it is that it is a very process-centric organization. So your standards are set, your processes are set, your training manuals are set, and the individual impact of each employee is not really such a great differentiator. In such a situation, I think it is perfectly fine to say that I'm okay when people leave because it is easy for me to hire somebody else and train them up in their place. And I'm quite happy to do that. Now, the term critical employee becomes very important when you have a process where there is something unique. It is difficult to hire a person with this talent, then that is a critical employee. This person is a high potential employee and I'm depending on this person for the next 5 years. Critical employee. So that's the definition for a critical employee. Someone who is doing work which is very difficult to get done by someone else. So in your organization, it is easy for others to get trained and learn to do it. So therefore, I would say that, yeah, in your case, there is no one who's more critical than anyone else, unless there are people who are high performers who are difficult to replace. So I would really say, look at it from your organization's perspective. And I think what you're doing is the right thing because you're saying that our processes are extremely well set. It is easy to train people. So I think what you're doing is perfectly okay.
See, honestly speaking, our organization was a zero process organization. Okay. And whatever the problems you are saying, we have faced it a million times. Yeah. But these pain points made us to transform into process oriented. Yeah. And when we saw that once it's a process oriented, for example, instead of a work being done by an engineer, the labor can handle it if it is a process oriented. Yeah. So this was the sense which we learned it. Yeah. And the secondary, and when we mean that there are some people with technical skills and we are hiring them, again, most of the times we fail, though we hire them from very good organizations, showing that they have a very good track record. But being a small industry, they were not able to match with us. So there, the recruitment process itself got failed.
Yeah, actually, Shivaram, what you're saying is absolutely the way to go. So, for example, when we spoke of recruitment, I was talking of structured hiring programs. The whole purpose of a structured hiring program, where you're bringing in batches after batches of diploma holders or graduate engineers and training them up, is to ensure that you're putting a process behind this. You're de-risking the entire problem. Now, that's a great way to go. But there are organizations where that may not be always possible. So for an organization which is not process intensive, it may be difficult to do that. But if you can do it, absolutely, that's the best way to address this. The moment you take the risks out then you don't have to be worried about it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm expecting that, you know, in a very stable organization, this is possible. In an organization that is seeing a rapid scale up growth and all of that, it becomes a little more challenging.
Okay.
Yeah. So the next question is from Saranyan. When we are promoting people from one level to next, do we need to interview again? Because we promoted from executive to team leader. When they didn't managerial, I missed it. Competency, they have started creating conflicts in the company. What is your advice on this?
I think that's a very good question. So the way I would see it is that I would actually define which are the levels in the organization where there is a significant jump in capabilities and abilities. So for example, I may say that the transition from an individual operator to a team leader is a significant transition. I would interview at that stage. Moving from a team leader into perhaps a branch manager, for example, is a significant transition. I would interview. So I would actually put in the career trajectory which are the significant points at which I have to interview, and at those points I would definitely make it a selection rather than a promotion, a grade promotion or whatever. So good point that some levels you do need to make it all about selection.
Yeah. So no more questions on the chat, but Jawahar has few more questions and would like to ask. It's already 6. Shall I?
Yeah, no, I think Jawahar, do you want to ask now, or is whatever you prefer? And I'm conscious that it's beyond time for everybody else. So can I close and then we can take if there is something? Is that okay, Priya?
Yeah, ma'am.
Okay, so I just want to thank everybody for the call, for being on the call. I want to thank everyone for the questions. As always, I've enjoyed interacting with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for being part of this HR masterclass, giving your time in spite of your busy schedule for 4 weeks for an hour to the audience and giving valuable suggestions and inputs and all that. It was a great learning for everyone, and I'm sure with the feedback what we've got as well, I will definitely say so. And thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much for your time. And I also like to thank the participants who were part of all the 4 sessions. And thank you all. Thank you.
So thank you, everyone.
Ma'am?
Yeah.
Ma'am, can you hear me, ma'am?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah,
I can hear you.
I'm not going to hold you much, just 2 more minutes of your time.
Okay.
Just I want to understand Indian laws for layoffs. So in times of like Corona now, say you have 2 or 3 people the same caliber, and you need to do a layoff. So is the criteria that I can use to do layoffs legally so that they don't come back to me in the court, first in, first out, or things like that. So what are the methodologies that Indian companies adopt for layoffs?
Okay. Yeah. So first is, of course, the government has said now that they will not interfere if organizations are wanting to lay off people. There are different stands that people have taken. So for example, there are organizations that have, and people are looking at it more from a social angle today than a legal angle, given the unique circumstances. So it's not so much about law as the social impact. So I have seen several organizations where the leadership team has come together and said, as an organization, we will take pay cuts instead of letting somebody go. That is one approach that they've taken. The other approach that people have taken is to look at each of the job categories and really go by merit of which one do we want to let go of first. And obviously, the person who's the last entrant is perhaps in some cases the least trained and the least experienced. So it's fair to do that. So I wouldn't want to give a very generic advice on this. I would actually suggest that you should actually look at your current situation and accordingly.
So there is no legal angle to this. I mean, nobody can like sue on basis of discrimination, on basis of religion. I was fired or laid off. Things like that.
So do look at those elements. Do
Okay.
look at those aspects.
Okay.
Ensure that you've covered those bases.
Okay.
In today's world, you cannot prevent anyone from going for a case.
Okay.
Now, the question to ask yourself is, have I acted as per my conscience? I think that's the only advice that I would give, because today it's easy to go and file a case.
Okay, ma'am. And my other question, last question, ma'am, is that, you talked about these policies, right? You don't need to have like stringent policies and stuff. So in regards to that, when you don't have policies, stringent policies, then you apply different standards on different people, then that becomes a problem. Then people start citing that, for her you did this, for him you did that, so why are you doing it to me now? So how do you tackle that problem?
Jawahar, I totally agree. I don't think our Indian organizations have reached the level of maturity where we can throw the policy book out of the window. I was just giving that example as something that HubSpot did. It calls for a very mature team for you to be able to do that. And honestly, sometimes I wonder if it helps really, because there are organizations which say that we don't have a leave policy. But what it really means is that if somebody wants to take leave, it is easier if you have a policy, because then I can go as per the policy. I have 10 days of casual leave. That's my entitlement. I can take it. But if you have no leave policy, every time I need to take leave, I'm asking everybody concerned, is it okay for me to take leave? So sometimes it's not really the done thing to say that I will have no policies. In our context, I would say the more clarity you have, the better it is for everybody.
Okay. Thanks a lot, ma'am. Ma'am,
Thank you, Jawahar.
all the 4 sessions, and it was very enlightening to me. And I got clarified a lot of doubts, that I had on HR policies. It was very useful. Thanks a lot. And I hope
So
to have
happy.
you back
Thank
in TiE sessions, again very soon, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jawahar. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
See you, everybody.
See you.